Hello, everyone, and welcome to talkSPORT's Settle the Score. After Super Sunday between Ipswich and Man Utd ends all square, I'm very happy. I will take a point. Will you, Wayne?
Well, I've got no option but to take the
Got no
point.
option. True.
Little bit disgruntled, to be honest. It felt a little bit flat from United, but in terms of the way that the game went, I don't think you've probably got more of a fair cause to grumble about the results. I think Ipswich had the better chances. They forced an honour into a couple of saves. So yeah, I mean, but there's no major talking points from the game in terms of like we're not going to have an argument or anything, are we?
We're not,
I
no,
think
very friendly.
seems like I think like there was a lot of respect from United to Ipswich as well. Maybe not from Delap. He was a bit rough and ready tonight, but certainly for Kieran McKenna, a lot of love for him at United. So nice to see a good Ipswich performance. I mean, the one thing that I was interested in seeing is how good you were as a team, because obviously I'm of the opinion that the Premier League is getting quite weak at the moment. So it's always interesting to see the quality of the promoted sides. And you certainly, I mean, I don't know if the bar is any high to you when I say this, but I feel like you're definitely better than Luton last year. And you looked, like I said earlier, very well value for that point.
Yeah, we've obviously off the back of that victory over Spurs has given us a huge amount of confidence. And then the great thing about us, particularly under Kieran McKenna, is that we are going to give every game a go. We're not happy to kind of go for a point and sit in. We might have to do that to grab hold and keep hold of what we have, like we did at Spurs. And to an extent, the second half we started to sit in a little bit and keep hold of the point that we had. But that's the only time we'll do it. So we'll give everyone a game. Sometimes we get caught out. We got caught out, particularly at West Ham, where they kind of just picked us off. But since then, we've kind of dug in. And I think the great thing about us, and probably the difference that I felt between the two sides, is that there's a real team spirit at Ipswich. Obviously, it's been fostered off the back of those two promotions. And probably what I saw from us is maybe what was lacking for you guys. It's kind of that team spirit, that helping out your mate, getting stuck in a little bit and helping everyone for the cause. And I think that's probably one of the big things AMORIM's got to kind of work through is you've always had the quality. It's just doesn't really seem to match it out on the pitch, does it? You don't get the kind of the 8 out of 10 performances every single week from your players like we do. Get from the likes of Sam Morsey, our captain in the middle of the park, is a 8 out of 10 every single week. And I think if you can get some consistency and performance out of those top quality players, then you should be fine. But it's just when it becomes a bit of a scrap, when it becomes an 11v11. At the moment, Ipswich, I think, we're giving everyone a game, and yeah, maybe that was the team spirit was maybe lacking for me. I don't know what you think about that.
No, lacking maybe a little bit strong on United, but I do think it was a difference in terms of that's what got Ipswich, what made Ipswich look like the better side today. So I think that you did. I think the difficulty for United is that obviously there's been so much talk about this new shape, and they tried the new shape today, and they've got a lot of round pegs for square holes in there.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of, don't get me wrong, they've got a lot of expensive talent in the side and a lot of homegrown talent, which is really good as well. If you look at the way that the team was set up, there are very few players in there that you say, all right, well, they're natural to play in that kind of role. Even Bruno Fernandes, who's the most creative player, looked kind of lost, and I was worried that he would. In the short era under Ruben Van Nistelrooy, he's looked really productive, and today was lost again. And I think that that's because he's playing in an unfamiliar system. And you've got Garnacho's being asked to play more of a creative role, where obviously, I mean, he got into at least two good positions today, where he was in front of the fullback, but he's not the quickest, and the defenders recovered well on him both times on that. So I think the issue that we've got in that disjointedness is something that, I mean, the talk before, isn't it? Whenever a new manager comes in at a big club, everyone's talking about this new way of football, and then you see the proof in the pudding. You actually see, all right, there's a lot of confidence issues with that squad, and also there are two other issues. The first is that I don't think it would be his first choice personnel.
Mm-hmm.
And the second is that he's only had a couple of days with all of the first team players. Now, I'm not using that as an excuse for today, because I think United, particularly because Ipswich haven't won at home so far this season, I think that United should have won. I think that they should have played better than what they did, and I think that they lost a little impetus. They didn't, like I think we said on Sky afterwards, that they You know, you wanted the attitude after the first goal, and they never had that. And
Yeah, I mean, you score so early. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm sat there in the North Stands, the end that United scored at, and I'm absolutely bricking it for the remaining 88 minutes of the game. You know, we've got an unpleasant history with big scores against Man United, admittedly away from home. But it did seem to me that yeah, you'd found that route down our left hand side with Ahmad, and didn't really utilise it again. You know, that pace down that side completely cut us open for the goal, and I was surprised that that was basically it. We didn't really see a huge amount of that afterwards. It might have been that McKenna, who is really active within game, tried to counteract that. I think Kiyuste came across maybe and helped out a little bit more. But yeah, it did seem to me that you'd seized the initiative, got the perfect start, and just kind of sat back off us a little bit. And at home, you know, you're not going to have seen a huge amount of Ipswich at Portman Road over the last few years, but Portman Road's a bit of a fortress. We might not have won at home yet, but we really should have at least beaten Fulham or Villa.
yeah.
There's particularly under the lights, you know, most football grounds are better under the lights, but the atmosphere, the closeness to the pitch, we're decent at home, and we'll always give a team a game at home. And the more that you kind of sat back and the more we got confidence and got on the ball, you know, I thought our midfield pair were probably, you know, in the first half, I think it's fair to say Ipswich the better team. Second half, probably United. But yeah, if Onana doesn't make that save, that instinctive save, it could have been Ipswich in 2-0 at half time. And I don't think that would have flattered us. But you guys improved second half, certainly, and got on the ball and made some really excellent substitutes, I thought. Brought on maybe the better quality was on the bench, perhaps, and started to come on? Or do you think,
No,
I don't know Man United that well, but I thought, you know, Ugarte came on, didn't he? Luke Shaw, I guess you've been waiting to bring him back as well. Has he been injured?
Shaw was a curious one, yeah, for me.
Hoyland's been, you know, coming. You've got a few players coming back from injury, haven't you? But yeah, I
Yeah.
thought you got better as the game went on.
I didn't actually. I felt that we
All
we
right.
became more disjointed when the because of the nature of the subs and they weren't like for
Okay.
like players. I take your point with Ugarte. I think he really did make a difference in the middle of the park, but United never had the control of it. AMORIM actually mentioned after the game, he was in criticism of his own team and not in praise of Ipswich, unfortunately. But he talked about two Ipswich players, and forgive me, I don't know the names. He referred to the numbers. He was saying that they had too much space. United weren't pressing well enough, and this is obviously pressing such a buzzword in football at the moment, closing down, but closing down as old as time, right? It's intelligence of what you do with that. And United have always had, well, I say always, of this generation of players, got an issue with the intelligence of closing down. So where Ipswich were able to sort of take advantage of that is, first of all, we weren't aggressive enough in that closing. But when the changes were made, because they weren't like for like, and there was a lot of disjointedness in there, and the shapes new and everything like that. These aren't excuses. I just think they're teething problems of a new
Yeah,
team.
it'll get better. It'll definitely get better. And
But
you know, the great thing for you, unlike, you know, Ipswich made 3 or 4 substitutes, and we brought on players from League One mostly. And our striker who came on for Delap, who, you know, it's great that you have picked up on him giving you absolute nightmares at the back. He's an absolute hooligan. We bloody love him. You know, he
yeah,
doesn't give defenses a rest. But when that quality starts to leave the field because they get tired, we just don't have the quality to come in. Whereas United were bringing on, you know, Mason Mount, 50 million quid or whatever it was. You know, that's the good thing for you. You know, we talked about the competitiveness of the Premier League. If you can't stay up and as a newly promoted team and bring more and more of that better quality in, you end up bouncing around. Whereas, you know, well-established teams like United and others, you know, you can afford to have multi-million-pound benches. That's just not the world that we're in. So that was the difference. And I kind of thought the benches might make a difference for you. But I guess you're right. I mean, I thought you had more of the ball, more of the territory, maybe not shots on goal, but I thought you were in control in the second half. And where I was in the North Stand at Portman Road, we were a little bit anxious towards the end, I'll be honest.
yeah. The shots on goal were equal, but XG I think is slightly higher in Ipswich's favour, which
Oh,
is
that
not
wouldn't surprise
surprising
me.
on the
Yeah,
balance of the game, right? I do think that there's a value in what McKenna's built there, and like I said, the back-to-back promotion, the fact that you've had a squad that stayed together and you've moved through the divisions and everything like that, and you know when you're a promoted side and when you're moving in the right direction, and you've got that kind of atmosphere around your team, these things are intangible benefits which United. You can plan for anything, you can strategize for anything, but these kind of like occasions you can't. And I think Amorim's first taste of a football game, being away, being at a club like Ipswich, with all due respect, where Ipswich will raise the game, like I said, under the lights, where that's the intangible, right? So he's seen that now. He sees, all right, well, this is something a bit different. This is an opponent. This is a team who I'm in charge of, who opponents will raise the game against. So the things like closing down and the intelligence of closing down and game management. I was disappointed, but where I'm criticising United, I've got to really give Ipswich full praise because well worthy of that point.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been a weird week for us because the chat has been largely about AMORIM, as you'd expect. Like, we know we're the second billing on this game, but hopefully a few people have kind of taken notice of us, because I think the Spurs game, the narrative about that, and we can talk about Man City if you like, I'm sure that will make you feel better. Obviously, Spurs going 1 week defeated by us, and then a couple of weeks later over the international break come and slap City 4-0. But there wasn't a huge amount of chat about how excellent Kieran McKenna had set us up at Spurs. And so I guess people today are kind of, oh, okay, well, maybe the Spurs result wasn't a fluke then. And I think that's the hope. You know, I think we'd quite like to stay under the radar and go about our business, but sometimes you want a little bit of a pat on the back. You know, Kieran McKenna and the team deserve it. So I appreciate the feedback today, because yeah, we haven't had a huge amount of nice thoughts about us, certainly since we came up. But I think hopefully when we drew 1-1 with United in 2001 when we came up last time. I don't know if that rings any bells. It's obviously, you play teams like Ipswich all the time, but it's in my memory as a football fan, and we drew 1-1, and that kind of set our season on a bit of a run. We played you with first home game.
Yeah,
got that 1-1 draw, and then went on a great run. And the hope is we build some momentum and pick up some wins, because we've got the likes of Wolves and Palace and Forest coming up, and you know they're games that, you know, we probably have to get the points in because of the relegation scrap being so tight. But yeah, it's a fascinating league. It really is. And I think we had been a little bit overwhelmed, but starting to feel like we belong now, which is great. So
the cliche is that every promoted team will take 17th. Do you think that that's still your position right now?
Yeah, I mean, there are town fans who've got blue tinted spectacles, having watched 2 back-to-back promotions of it, or a back-to-back promotion. But I would take 17th all day long. You know, if it takes 3 teams getting points deductions, you know, bring it on. As far as I'm concerned, because you kind of get the sense that if we stay up, to the point about bringing in that quality and having that strength and depth and establishing ourselves, I think we'd give it a really good go. But yeah, it's really tough. And you know, even though we've now drawn 1 and won 1 in our last 2, we're still in the bottom 3. So really tight.
It's funny looking at United because everyone's talking they've got to get into the top 4 and everything, and you see that the way that the top 4's looking at the moment, it's fairly open, to be fair.
Yeah, no one wants it, do they?
And AMORIM is saying 1 game at a time, and I think I'm someone who, I do remember that Ipswich game. I've got long memory of good and bad things happening with United and Ipswich, and United with new managers as well. And I do remember when we brought Van Gaal in, he started with a 3-man defence against Swansea on the opening day, and he disbanded it by half time because it wasn't working. Wow. And try as he might to return to a 3-man defence, it never quite worked. Now, it's interesting because it's not really a thing in football. You know, everyone plays this 4-2-3-1, don't they, at the moment? That's the en vogue shape, and United have generally played the players that they've got are the players that fit that system. So how AMORIM's going to adapt to that is probably the bigger challenge than the results, really, because it's as big, I should say. You want to see the performance levels rising. We saw that good feel-good factor come back under Rood, and it's sort of taken a step back today because it's a bit more scientific. You know, you'll look for a long-term structure. And
sure, but I think if you'd played us at home, you probably would have beaten us today. I think because of, you know, as you mentioned, the kind of the intangibles. I think a full Old Trafford might probably been a bit too daunting for us. But I'll take 17th for Ipswich. What's the target for you guys? Is there patience in the fan base because of the struggles over the last few years with Ten Hag? Are you know, being top 6? Is that the target for AMORIM in the first season, or is it just build and progress and give him time to find his way?
I think it's minimum top 4, and I don't like saying that as a United fan. I think it should be aiming to be in a title fight every time because of the size of the club and the resources that we've got, no matter who we're competing against. I think that's United's target, should always be that. And I think that AMORIM's been brought in with that being the objective in mind. So I don't think that there's any adapting. Well, there's obviously an adapting period and there's time to be taken for settling in. I don't mean that. I just mean he's got to hit the ground running. He's got to show results. He's totes that up himself. Do you know what I mean? And that's
Well,
good. You want a manager with that kind of thing, right? You want
of
that manager
course.
to be
It
saying,
takes time, though, doesn't it?
yeah, oh, yeah. I mean, I'm a supporter who will give time, and I have given time to all the other managers. It's just interesting to see this kind of change in attitude. So I think that the minimum is going to be top four because it is, like you said, it's wide open. Nobody seems to want it, and United have got to develop that consistency to get there.
Yeah. I have to ask this before we finish up. I wonder whether quite a few Man United fans was there thinking whether the right man in the dugout for you is the one in the Ipswich dugout. Maybe if the sliding doors moment in the summer. We obviously love Kieran McKenna, and I wouldn't wish him away at all. And the fact that we kept him is massive for our chances this season. But I think all of us accept that at some point he's going to go on to bigger and better things, perhaps beyond Ipswich. Do you kind of regret maybe United sticking around with Ten Hag in the summer and not going for a McKenna?
No, he's an interesting one. I do rate him highly as a coach. I think that United would have been too big a jump for him in the summer
Okay.
for all manner of reasons. But I know there are some supporters who would definitely advocate for that because he was well loved at United. There are some people who, because he was with Ole, it was kind of like there was a fan base split. So maybe there's some people critical of McKenna for that reason. I liked him. I think that he's definitely worthy of, unfortunately, probably a better job in the future. Not better. I mean, like move to a bigger club or something like that.
There's a pecking order. I know where we sit in
Yeah,
the food
it
chain.
sounds like kind of like backhanded compliment, really, doesn't it? Because I know Ipswich are historically a very big club, and you shouldn't take that for granted as well. So it's kind of sometimes you think a manager finds the right place for himself, and McKenna's certainly done that at Portman Road.
There's definitely we're really grateful of that. And, the longer he stays, the bigger you feel like Ipswich's chances are of establishing themselves as not a force in the top flight, but certainly as, the likes of Brentford and Brighton and those kind of teams who we aspire to be. So, long may he stick around at Ipswich Town. He's kind of, after the last few years, if he kept us up, there could be a statue of Kieran McKenna outside Portman Road. That's how much we love him. So I'm not going to wish him away to anyone. Great chat. I'm going to keep an eye out for United for the rest of the season because it's a really fascinating situation there. I like the appointment of AMORIM. It reminds me a lot of the appointment of McKenna. I think if you give him time, there'll be bumps in the road. It took McKenna half a season to get his Ipswich side into a position that he was happy with. And from that point onwards, we didn't look back. So if he's of the same kind of stature, the same kind of coach who learns from mistakes and always has a plan, then I think you guys should be good. And as we say, no one wants the top four. So maybe, who knows, go and grab it.
Yeah, best of luck, mates.